it was decided to have a document drawn up which would both declare the colony's independence and list the reasons why they felt justified in taking this extreme action, with the so-called Committee of Five put together to draft the document, comprising of John Adams, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Robert Livingston, and Roger Sherman. In a surprising move, the committee selected the young 33-year-old Jefferson to write the document over the much more distinguished writer and well-known individual worldwide in Ben Franklin, or one of the pinnacles of legal and political minds in the world at the time in John Adams. It was, however, Adams who would persuade both the committee to choose Jefferson and to convince Jefferson himself to take the lead. Adams would write to Jefferson on his reasoning. Reason first, you are a Virginian, and a Virginian ought to appear at the head of this business. Reason second, I am obnoxious, suspected, and unpopular. You are very much otherwise. Reason third, you can write 10 times better than I can. But as to the text of the Declaration, Jefferson would state it was neither aiming at originality of principle or sentiment, nor yet copied from any particular and previous writing. It was intended to be an expression of the American mind and to give to that expression the proper tone and spirit called for by the occasion. Now nearing the end of June, the legislatures of all but 2 of the colonies, Maryland and New York, had finally authorized their delegates to vote on the matter of independence, and the Provincial Congress of New Jersey even had their royal governor, William Franklin, arrested on June the 15th. However, one of Maryland's delegates, Samuel Chase, was ultimately able to convince the Assembly of the Counties of Maryland to change their mind on June the 28th and allow the Maryland delegates to vote on the matter. This was the same day the Committee of Five first presented their final draft of a declaration by the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled to Congress. New York delegates, however, had to abstain from voting on it owing to British forces interfering with the provincial Congress there convening to give them permission. Nevertheless, over the next few days, Congress continually made tweaks to the Committee of Five's document, cutting out about a quarter of the original text, as well as tweaking the wording here and there. As to what was removed, most notably was a section where Jefferson, ironically not only a slaveholder himself, but who would eventually have an entire family and long-term relationship with one of his slaves, not only condemned the evil of slavery, but accused King George of aiding that institution in the colonies. Jefferson would later write of why this text was removed. The clause 2, reprobating the enslaving the inhabitants of Africa, was struck out in complaisance to South Carolina and Georgia, who had never attempted to restrain the importation of slaves and who, on the contrary, still wished to continue it. Our northern brethren also, I believe, felt a little tender under these censures, for though their people had very few slaves themselves, yet they had been pretty considerable carriers of them to others. In the end, on July the 2nd, 12 of the 13 colonies voted in favor of independence, with only the New York delegates abstaining until they could get permission to vote on the matter, which happened about a week later.